Do you find yourself in these patterns of destructive dissonance? It's like you think, I should be doing this, but I'm not sure if I want to be doing that, and I really need to be able to do this, and you feel like you're just kind of holding yourself back from being able to be successful because your mind will not let you actually perform. I'm Jennifer Evans with Empowering Wellness Counseling Solutions. In this week, we're talking about networking, kind of maximizing on the group dynamic and being able to network between people so that we can achieve the intentions that we set for success. And oftentimes what we find is that as we are setting our intentions for success, negative dynamic comes in again. It just is relentless. That bad brain is so relentless. And so as we are setting ourselves up and saying, this is what I want, this is what I deserve, right? The negative narrative comes in. We start to have emotional reactions. We start to doubt. We start to have fear, anxiety, what ifs, shoulda, couldas. That causes cognitive distortions or invalid data points. That pulls on our attachment. Attachment is 25% of the negative dynamic. It's kind of a big deal. Attachment gets pulled in. Our fear of abandonment, our fear of obligation or being a burden, or equitably both, that fearful avoidant or disorganized attachment, boils up to the surface. It feeds our negative narrative, this sense of value and what we deserve and what is our purpose and what we're able to achieve, our capacity. Brings in our trauma and our past stress, creates a filter or a lens of how we perceive the world and how we interact with others and how we perceive others interact with us. This invoicing that we do, which pulls up perceived expectations. And our mind is partying here. The destructing dissonance of perceived expectations. This idea, these societal standards, these external validators that we get stuck in, causes us to have some kind of explicit emotional reaction, whether that is shutting down, procrastination, or overly exploiting or explosive anger, tears, regression, perfectionism, causing more emotional reactions. And in this negative narrative or this negative dynamic, what we're doing is that we're causing more and more avoidant tendencies, procrastination, performance anxiety, causing procrastination, and then kind of flipping over to perfectionism and then back to procrastination. And we get stuck in this wheel. And yet we have not come out of avoidance. We're just layering more and more and more in our negative dynamic. Go back to the previous videos this week. We really deconstruct this in multiple ways through precognition, through internal and external validations, through the idea of being intentional and planting seeds for purpose instead of focusing on outcomes. We are deconstructing this idea that our mind wants to be in two places at once. That's what cognitive dissonance is I really want to be successful, but I don't really believe that I can or that I have the value to do it. I know that there are things that are logically, I know there are things that I can do that will put me on a track for success. Emotionally, I can't feel that I'm able to do that. And in that negative cycle, coming out of the anxious cycle, we have a distressing thought, feeling, or behavior, and that's where that negative dynamic is. Avoidance, perfectionism, procrastination, short-term relief, because we feel like we talked about this with internal and external validation. There's a feedback loop there. We think we have perceived control. That's the ooh, I'm doing something. I have internal locus of control. I think I've got this. But what we're really doing is building long-term anxiety, long-term low motivation, low value, lack of capacity, causing more distressing thought, feelings, and behaviors, more layering in the negative dynamic. So what do we do? That sounds impossible to get out of. Well, as a licensed mental health counselor and a professional brain coach, I help my clients to rebuild neural pathways to be able to immediately find a positive flow state and find that positive flow cycle. So we are eliminating the reactions, we're finding our responses, and our responses will pull us into the positive cycle. Doesn't that sound nice? And it comes from understanding what is self-imposed versus what are external expectations that are causing this performance anxiety. And so what is it that in therapy we look at our past and we look clinically at our diagnoses that are causing these self-imposed experiences. In coaching, we are looking at our actions and we're creating a clear action plan to be able to kind of cut through and do opposite action. So rewiring our brain a lot through understanding all of the internal processes that are happening and being able to find radical acceptance with those internal processing versus like this is the pattern for success. Like this is what you need to do, and you need to stop thinking and just do it, right? Go Nike, just do it. So depending on what you're looking for, if you want a why, go to therapy. If you want a how, get a coach. I do both because I have a license who taught me both and how to set boundaries depending on how to individuate on what the service is that I'm offering and how to best support the person who is seeking that growth. And so that is kind of what I offer people. And so how we identify these self-imposed expectations, this dissonance, versus what are external validations or external validators or expectations, that perceived expectation, is we start to look at kind of what the messaging is. And then we start to look at and what is ours and what is somebody else's. And what that does is it helps us to understand. And it helps us to be mindful and create a screen for ourselves that says, does this serve me? And we go back to those values. And we say, well, does this serve a value of mine? Is this my value? When I first started doing, I actually have seen tremendous growth in myself as well as my clients as I have developed this neuroscience-based framework of change. And it creates happier, healthier, more purpose-driven lives through these key step series. And in the first, technically chapter 2, because mindfulness is the foundation of wellness, and that's how I start each of my books, is through a mindful presence and developing that mindful presence. It's important for us to have that. The next chapter is success. And success says, what are your values? And as I've done these exercises over and over again, I realized that the first couple of times I would try to do my values exercise, perceived expectations would come in. And performance trauma was all over those values exercises. So I continue to share with my clients and those who bought the book, do it several times. Sit with it. This is not a one and done. This isn't, oh, now I know what success is, I'm going to go do it. It's meant to be there. That's why I give the journal reflection prompts. It's not to just say, what do I think about it right now? But use that in a routine to continually think about it, to continually be mindful and understand, why am I doing the things that I'm doing? This must be a value of mine. I keep approaching things in the same way. Is this a value of mine or is this implicit trauma? And what I found is like I said, weaving through what my values were was a lot of performance trauma. It was a lot of fear that I was holding on to and I needed to let go of. It wasn't serving me. It wasn't allowing me to be successful. It wasn't allowing me to put my processes out there. And the more that I let go of that fear, the more that I had faith and I had trust, the more that I was able to be more present and be able to actually be more productive. But that productivity now wasn't something that was anxiously driving me for a perceived expectation of not disappointing somebody. But instead, that productivity was a joy, was a way I found purpose, was an excitement that I looked forward to engaging in while trying to mitigate the balance of life. So that's what we're trying to do is get back to being mindful and saying, well, I keep doing these things. This must be a value of mine. How does this relate to the values that I have? And as we get back to what those values are, then we see, well, this is self-imposed. This was an implicit memory that I thought I had to do, which means it's also an external expectation. I thought I had to do this. It's all connected. And we come back to what